Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm Andrew Scott. I'm the chair of the Portland School Board. And I'm just going to give a couple brief remarks, and I'm going to then turn it over to some other folks who are going to talk a little bit about what we did today. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who showed up today. This is a really important topic and something that is near and dear to the school district. And as the violence in our community has begun to affect our kids, it's something that we're really focused on. And the people in this room that we asked to come here today are obviously really focused on this as well, not just for our youth, but for the entire community. We've just had a very productive conversation. The goal here today was to brainstorm some ideas, to identify some short-term things that we can do right away, and then talk about continuing the conversation in the long run as well, and talk about some potential interventions that are going to positively impact our kids and the community overall. With that, I'm going to now turn it over to Superintendent Guerrero, and then we're going to hear from some of the other elected officials in the room, and then I think we're going to open up for questions. So, Superintendent Guerrero.
Great. Thank you, Chair Scott. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you know, despite many proactive efforts as a school system to improve the physical safety and security of our schools, the city's gun violence, unfortunately, has now reached our doorsteps. With a sense of shared responsibility, the Portland Public Schools stands ready to collaborate on exploring all potential strategies and proactive solutions aimed at addressing this crisis. We recognize that this compels us to urgently step up our efforts with our city and county public safety officials and partners, and many other community partners. Today's gathering is an example of that. We had a great conversation around getting a clear sense of the inventory of prevention, intervention, support, and the important role that law enforcement plays in this crisis. So I want to thank all of our elected and public officials who joined us this morning to explore how we can deepen our partnerships to address the many complex factors that endanger the safety of our children, youth, and families, as well as the dedicated adults who work in our schools. So as educational leaders, our ability to ensure a safe and positive school community requires a collective approach and coordination with public safety agencies. While this was a brief discussion, we identified some areas for immediate follow-up, and I know we will need to enlist many other partners and stakeholders to arrive at substantive solutions. I look forward to hearing further input from our students, educators, staff, and families to further understand the complexities of this issue, and along with PPS school board members, discuss what further strategies we can implement as a school district while partnering with local public safety officials to support broader community efforts. So I'm grateful for the group conversation today with our local leaders. I heard a shared commitment to continue dialoguing about and problem solving the issues impacting the safety of our neighborhoods and our school community. So with that up next, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Ted Wheeler.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Guerrero, and thank you, Chair Scott. Thank you to all of my colleagues, and thanks to the assembled media for being here today. I think we all agree that when it comes to public safety, there is no group of individuals in our community who deserve safety in their environment more than our children. And the kind of collaboration that was represented this morning is exactly the kind of coordination and collaboration and communication that has to take place between different government entities in order for us to be successful in making sure that our schools are safe. I want to thank the superintendent, I want to thank this chair and the entire school board for organizing this important meeting this morning. Briefly, I shared a couple of comments with regard to some of the programs that the City of Portland is engaged in. We, of course, spearheaded the Safer Summer PDX program last summer. Historically, gun violence increases over the course of the summer. We wanted to make sure that we had intervention in place to reduce the potential for gun violence in the community. It was a very successful program. We had done 10 different programs with the Portland Public Schools. We served over 500 youth. Those youth indicated that the program was successful, that they felt more confidence, that they felt greater support, and we saw reductions over the levels of gun violence that we expected to see but did not see over the course of the summer. Additionally, we have just completed a request for proposals, an RFP, that has gone out. The City Council has supported $5 million over the next 2 years to invest in what we call credible interveners. Those are individuals with credibility in the community who have connections to individuals in our community who might be engaged in or impacted by gun violence. We know that factually these kinds of programs reduce gun violence in the community. We are expecting to significantly increase our credible intervener program at the City of Portland. And today we talked about some of the strategies on how we could work more closely with the county and the district attorney, the school district, and others to make those programs more successful. And then finally, we can't talk about public safety in the community without talking about police. And I think all of us here assembled understand that we've had an historic shortage of police officers in our community. I want you to know we are turning the tide. We are not having a problem recruiting police officers in the City of Portland. We had over 1,500 people apply to be police officers in the City of Portland last year. In 2022, we hired 71 new officers. That's the largest number of sworn officers that we've hired in many, many years. That does not include non-sworn staff that we've also been able to successfully recruit at the City of Portland. I did ask help from our assembled colleagues here in terms of our legislative agenda. One of the pinch points in terms of getting those recruited officers active on the streets is that they are required to have state training and state certification through the DPSST. And right now there is a shortage of academy slots. And so we have good applicants who've already been vetted, who've already been brought on board, waiting 4 or 5 months to be able to attend one of those academies. So I've asked the governor and I've asked the legislature. In fact, I've met with the governor on this. I met with our legislative delegation yesterday. I'm asking them to increase the number of slots that are available at DPSST. That'll not only help the Portland Police Bureau, but other law enforcement agencies in the metro area. And we are also asking for the possibility of being able to do academies here in our own region, because a lot of people are going from the metro area all the way down to Salem for that training. And since there's so many people doing it here, why don't we just have some of those academies right here, have them now, and get these folks on board who are committed to being Portland police officers. And of course, we talked about some of the interventions we're doing at the neighborhood level and around the schools, and the chief did a great job of talking about some of the important follow-up that's been done by the Police Bureau as a result of some of the gun violence we've seen in the community, the focused intervention team, the enhanced community safety team around some of the investigative follow-up, and then just some of the personal touch that we've provided to the Portland Public Schools and their leadership to offer whatever support we can potentially offer to help them reduce gun violence in their schools. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Vega-Peterson, the Multnomah County Chair. I want to start off by saying thank you, first of all, to Chair Scott and Superintendent Guerrero for convening this group today. It was a really productive conversation. I'm also grateful for the mayor, for the city, the DA, the sheriff, even the U.S. Attorney's Office for being a part of today's discussion. This meeting today was really about making our community safer, but especially making it safer for our children and our youth. Their jobs are to grow, are to learn, and to thrive, but they're not able to do that with the threat and the reality of gun violence that we've been seeing in our community. It is our job as adults and leaders to work together to create that safety for them, and that was exactly what this morning was about. At Multnomah County, we are working on the issue of community violence and gun violence, both in upstream ways, being deeply invested in prevention through our work with early childhood programs, through the presence that we have in our Sun's School programs, really in meeting young people and their families early and staying with them to build that stability that they need. We are present in our student health centers that Multnomah County runs in public schools systems, both for PPS as well as for the 6 school districts throughout the county. This is providing both preventative and the extremely necessary behavioral health care for students in need. We have 38 school-based health centers across the school districts, including 12 programs in PPS alone, 6 of which are culturally specific. but we are also deeply invested in the downstream work that is happening, working with deeply affected community members. That's including families that our behavioral health team at the county works with, made up of culturally specific mental health consultants, including the Black and African American community, the Latinx community, and our African refugee communities. This is providing mental health services to those who are directly impacted by gun violence through services that meet them where they're at in the community and in their lives. We also work deeply with investments through our juvenile services programs through the Department of Community Justice. We are working with the folks that are our clients there, but we are also working at the grassroots level with organizations, including 11 Black-led grassroots organizations whose leaders are people who have been impacted or involved in community violence and violence prevention, who are doing deep engagement with community members who are at risk or engaged in gun violence. And in the conversations that we had this morning, one of the things that we've committed to working together is looking at these types of investments that are being made through county programs, through city programs, through school-based programs, and really making sure we're leveraging those investments the right way to make sure that they're having the impact, that we are reaching the community members, and that we are making progress on this issue. So that is the thing that I've took away that I was most happy about today, is that commitment to working together to make sure that the importance that we share around this issue that has led to the investments that we're making, that we can make sure that those investments are building on each other, and that we're having the right communication to make sure that we are engaging with community members who need help across all of the work that we're doing at our different organizations. As an East County parent who lives in the Hazelwood neighborhood, I have seen the impacts of gun violence, the reality of gun violence in my community. It's this experience that really commits me to the work that we're doing today and knowing the way that is impacting our children. But I'm really optimistic and impressed by the dedication that we see here today to really make a bigger impact on this crisis going forward. And again, I thank everyone for convening this morning. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to take questions. Please state your name and your affiliation for the record. One question. If there's time at the end, we'll allow some follow-ups. First question.
Yes, my question is for Police Chief Lavelle. Do we have any reason to suspect that some of these recent shootings might be gang-related?
I won't speculate on that right now. We do feel like we have a good idea of some of the folks involved in this latest group of shootings. We've made some arrests as well. And I think, for us, we want to be a good partner. So we come in, we investigate. Our focus intervention team, enhanced community safety team have been really good at figuring out some of the involved parties, having good communications with folks from the school district, and helping us with our investigation. And that's kind of the role we've played up to now. But I won't speculate as to any particular groups or gangs.
What's the plan regarding school resource officers?
Sure. As an educator, when I think of school community safety, I think about a whole continuum of prevention, intervention, support, and of course, we have to maintain a collaborative working relationship with law enforcement, public safety agencies. We're in the midst of continuing focus groups with our student leaders, educators, families, and we're continuing to gather their input around all of the elements that go into making sure there's a positive, safe learning environment. I want to make sure that we have a nuanced conversation about what that means. There are no panaceas or simple solutions here, but we're going to bring that input, and I know that our school board is going to consider, along with us, remain open to what all the possibilities are if we can get to a point in the conversation where we have clarity about what their specific role could or could not be on our campuses. So there hasn't been decision on that point specifically at this point.
For the board chair.
Name and outlet, please. Name and outlet.
Simon Gutierrez, KPTV.
Yeah.
Following up on Ben's comments, what's your personal stance on school resource officers, whether that's a valuable part of school, in a safety sense, or whether that's an intrusion? I know it was championed by both the board and district leaders when SROs were removed from schools as a positive thing. but there's clearly a void in terms of public safety.
So I think I'm going to actually echo what the superintendent said. We're engaged right now in conversations with the community. There are a number of focus groups that are scheduled coming up, which I'm really interested to hear from our parents, from our students, from other community members. The idea of having officers in our schools is one component, or one potential component of the larger public safety question. It's something we certainly as a district are open to. But as the superintendent said, I think really looking at what's the role, how do they interact, are they trained to interact with youth, and also making sure that if we do go down that road, we're really thinking about all the other aspects as well. And I think that's one of the things that I'll be honest, I'm a little frustrated. The conversation in the community seems to become very binary about, are you going to have school resource officers or not? One of the things about today's conversation is we covered a whole host of interventions and programs that are really going to help reduce violence. And so absolutely, it's a conversation that's happening. It's only one of many conversations that's happening right now.
Do you think it was a mistake to remove them from schools?
I think the decision that was made at the time was the right decision, and I think right now we're reevaluating and taking a look at whether that's going to be one component of a public safety approach.
Elizabeth Miller, Oregon Public Broadcasting. So I have a superintendent. You mentioned through the conversation there were areas for follow-up kind of pointed out today. Could you talk about what some of that follow-up looks like and whether any of these plans might be implemented this school year?
Sure. Well, as a school system, we're clear that there's a whole lot of folks and agencies having ongoing conversations about public and community safety. I think we identified a few spaces and tables where we can build in some tighter collaboration and communication. It won't surprise you to learn that we're oftentimes talking about the same youth and families in our community. And so part of the conversation really focused on, well, how can we be really strategic about how we case manage and support those individuals, and how do we combine our efforts? Because we might have some overlap there that maybe we can really be strategic about. So, I'm excited about that opportunity to really engage in some of that collaboration. So that's just an example.
Can I jump in on this as well? Because this conversation was fantastic, and there's obviously a tremendous amount of work going on, in all the local governments around here. I think what was really useful for me was to hear about, when the mayor talks about the interveners, right? How are we helping connect some of the at-risk youth that we're aware of in the school district to the folks that they're funding? When we talk about sharing information, the county has a number of programs, right, directed towards at-risk youth, and we already have some really strong collaboration there. But the folks on the ground in our schools, the principals, the teachers, and families are often the ones who can really say, hey, here's someone who really could use some additional services, and are we making sure that we're getting that information to the folks who are running that? And then some of the existing tables that already exist, making sure that the school district is at those tables and able to sort of hear some of those conversations. So I think there are a lot of really immediate things that are going on, and I think one of the most important things is that this is not the only conversation we're going to have. This is the first of many, and so whether they're existing tables or reconvening this group, I think there's going to be a lot more to come in the future.
For the superintendent, you identified some.
Please.
Thank you. Isabella Garcia from the Portland Mercury. My question's for County Chair, Mayor Wheeler, and the Superintendent. I'm curious, as we go into the upcoming legislative session, is gun control a priority in any of your legislative priorities for the county, city, and for the district?
So I think, Multnomah County always has requests around community safety, public safety, and really looking at reimagining justice. As we're looking at our asks, I think having the conversations about what the best ask will be in terms of how the state can play a part in what we're seeing on our streets, how we can support our students. Again, it's making the investments on the urgency of the situation that we're seeing right now, but also building those upstream investments to help stabilize children and families, and that will definitely be a part of the Multnomah County ask.
Thank you for the question. Just by way of primer, anything that gets on the city's legislative agenda has to be uniformly supported by all of the commissioners. So there may be some items that make it to the legislative agenda that are unanimous. There may be other items where we just go in and discuss it individually. I, of course, personally supported Measure 114. The big question now is the implementation of Measure 114. I think I don't want to speak for everybody on my city council, but I would say many of us, including myself, would like to see the implementation of Measure 114, and I think that's probably the closest to a big idea that could be implemented that could have an immediate impact is if it is implemented. With regard to the rest of our agenda, it is largely focused on public safety, making sure that the officers that we recruit can actually be trained and certified as quickly as possible. There are other interventions where we're asking for support. For example, the Credible Intervener program that I discussed earlier. We could definitely use state support for what we think is a state priority to maintain that program. We started the Safer Summer PDX program using some of the federal dollars that were allocated during COVID. We now have to scramble to find ongoing resources to sustain those investments. Same with the RFP that we now have $5 million for 2 years, but longer term, we'd like to be able to sustain that effort. Of course, we support the county's initiatives around mental health and substance abuse. We can't talk about, as our U.S. attorney said earlier today, I thought very eloquently and accurately, we can't talk about violence without also talking about some of these other issues around mental health and substance abuse and other community indicators of violence. Our agenda is available on our website. I don't remember exactly where, but do you remember, Stephanie, where? It's on the media page. Okay, and we'll make sure the Mercury gets a copy of that as well. And if you have follow-up, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Director Constam to come up and share a response on this particular question.
Thank you. So for our school board, I chair what we call our intergovernmental committee. So our role is really to coordinate resources from all these different entities and from the state to advocate for children and to support our students. And so I would echo Chair Scott's comments. This was a really productive meeting. There are a lot of initiatives underway. There are a lot of resources on the table. There are more resources coming, as the mayor said, with this new request for proposals to support these community-based credible messengers, and we know that that work is really effective. And the reason it's effective is because they are creating relationships with our kids and they're trusted in the community. So some of these credible messengers, some of these outreach people they're at our community events. Our kids see them, they know them, they trust them. They were at the basketball tournament where there was an incident recently. So the more of those relationships that we can support and build, the better. And I just want to thank everyone who's here because you heeded the call from our superintendent who said, we need to bring everything we have to bear on this question of violence that's affecting our kids. And it's not just interrupting the violence, but it's restoring a sense of safety and really a sense of safety in our communities, because there's a lot of fear out there now. So the more visible we can make these interventions, the more we can kind of calm things down and restore a sense of safety and security. So thank you to everyone, and we as a board are here to represent our community, so call on us at any moment in any way, and we're here to support the work of everyone.
So in regards to specific legislative advocacy, I was glad to hear a lot of our efforts are around engaging our youth in productive, constructive, positive, pro-social activities. An example of that is PPS offered the largest menu of summer programming, largely funded by one-time federal dollars. We'll be able to continue offering some scaled-down version of that this summer. But I know that Representative Denbrough, for example, is sponsoring, I believe, a legislative bill to support additional summer programming here in Oregon. I think that benefits all communities when our youth are involved in either academic supports or enrichment or being mentored by many of our community partners who are culturally specific from these communities. So we're hoping for some additional resources to maintain that. We did not hear of an incident where any of our youth involved in summer programming or involved in any other issues on the street. So we know that it's a helpful resource, and that's one example of advocacy that we're hoping the legislative electeds can be helpful with.
All right, we have time for one final question.
Hi, Julia Silverman from the Oregonian. Dr. Scott, you mentioned that you guys are in the middle of focus groups, and the superintendent said so too. You all receive a lot of feedback from constituents. I'm wondering if you sense a shift in public opinion since the decision to pull SROs from schools in 2020, and if so, what you think is feeding that? I know you all receive regular feedback from constituents.
Yeah, I have a short answer, which is that I don't think I'm well positioned to gauge public opinion. I would be interested if there was a poll, but we do get a lot of email. It's on both sides of this issue. I think there are a lot of strong feelings on both sides.
Superintendent, can I have one more question?
Okay, thank everybody for attending today. We appreciate it. Have a great day.